Lyra knelt on the execution platform in Discipline Square, the beating heart of Citadel Prime, capital of the United Federation on planet Xylos. Her indigo skin glistened with nervous sweat beneath the harsh lights, her silver eyes staring blankly at the silent crowd of humans and Xylosians gathered before her. The rust-colored polluted sky hung low over the square, the air thick with chemical smells that burned the lungs. The United Federation had established its dominion over Xylos decades ago during the Unification invasion. What began as a peacekeeping mission quickly revealed itself as colonization. The Xylosians, once proud masters of advanced biotechnology, were now second-class citizens in their own world, closely monitored and controlled. Their once sacred groves and crystal cities had been replaced with industrial complexes and military outposts. Lyra had been charged with Level Alpha insurrection, the highest crime possible, accused of masterminding an underground network that smuggled forbidden technology out of human-controlled industrial zones to Xylosian resistance groups on the periphery. The evidence against her was overwhelming, meticulously assembled by Federation security. She had remained silent throughout her trial, accepting her sentence with the quiet dignity her people were known for, even as the human judges condemned her to execution. From his security headquarters overlooking the square, Commander Kalen watched the proceedings with cold satisfaction through multiple holographic screens. His pale blue eyes reflected the execution feed, his scarred face impassive as he monitored the crowd for any signs of unrest. Kalen had personally overseen the investigation that led to Lyra's capture. This execution would serve as a message to all Xylosians. Resistance was futile. Commence the procedure, Kalen ordered through his neural comm. On the platform, the executioner, a humanoid robot designed for the sole purpose of carrying out death sentences, stepped forward. Unlike human executioners of old, this machine possessed no conscience, no potential for hesitation. Its metal face was expressionless as it raised the energy weapon, a specialized device that would disrupt Lyra's neural pathways in an instant, causing what the Federation euphemistically called humane cessation. Lyra closed her eyes, not out of fear but acceptance. In her mind flashed images of her brother Kale, his passionate speeches about freedom, his brilliant innovations in resistance technology, his tearful farewell when she had volunteered to be the decoy. "I will make your sacrifice matter," he had promised. She hoped he had escaped far enough by now. The crowd held its breath as the executioner's weapon hummed to life, building toward discharge. Energy crackled along specialized conductors. In 3 seconds, Lyra would cease to exist. 2, 1, stop! A voice shattered the ritualistic silence. A figure burst from the crowd, leaping over the weakened electronic security barrier with surprising agility. It was a human male, dressed in the gray coveralls of a low-level Federation maintenance technician. His brown hair was disheveled, his face pale with terror, but set with determination. He had no business being here, no authority to interfere. The security drones above the platform immediately swiveled toward the intruder, but they were programmed primarily to prevent Xylosian interference. A human interruption had not been anticipated in their protocols, causing a momentary delay in response. The man, Jax, landed on the platform and threw himself in front of Lyra just as the executioner fired. A personal force field, an outdated, nearly banned device, flickered to life from his belt, absorbing much of the energy blast. The shield overloaded instantly, shattering in a display of white-hot fragments. Jax screamed as residual energy burned through his shoulder, sending him crashing to the platform floor. The square erupted into chaos. Xylosians in the crowd pushed back in terror, while human civilians scattered. Security drones descended, their warning sirens blaring. Federation guards rushed toward the platform with weapons drawn. "She's innocent," Jax shouted through his pain, struggling to his knees. "There's a larger conspiracy. Commander Kalen is framing her to cover up his crimes." In his command center, Kalen's composure shattered. "Capture them. Capture them both alive," he barked into his comm, already calculating damage control scenarios. On the platform, Lyra remained frozen in shock. The unexpected interruption had broken her resigned trance. She stared at the human who had risked his life for her, a stranger, a member of the oppressor race, with utter confusion. Jax stumbled to his feet, clutching his injured shoulder. With his good hand, he fumbled at his belt and activated a small, crude-looking device. A pulse of electromagnetic energy radiated outward, temporarily disabling the nearby drones and communication systems. "We have 90 seconds before backup systems engage," he gasped, grabbing Lyra's arm. "If you want to live, come with me now." Lyra hesitated only for a moment before her survival instinct kicked in. She nodded and allowed the human to pull her to her feet. Together, they raced off the platform as the confused executioner robot attempted to reset its systems. Jax led them down a maintenance access tunnel beneath the square, moving with the confidence of someone intimately familiar with Citadel Prime's infrastructure. For a low-level technician, his knowledge of the city's hidden paths seemed suspiciously extensive. They descended through narrow utility shafts and forgotten service corridors, the sounds of security alerts growing distant above them. Lyra's legs trembled with each step, her body still adjusting to the adrenaline surge after having accepted death. "Why?" she finally asked as they paused in a junction of pipes to catch their breath. "Why would a human risk everything for a Xylosian?" Jax winced as he checked his shoulder wound. "Because you're innocent. I was repairing a communication node in the high-security wing when I accidentally intercepted encrypted messages about your case. They framed you deliberately, used you as a scapegoat. But why would you care?" Lyra pressed, her silver eyes searching his face for deception. "Because I'm sick of the lies," Jax replied, his voice tight with pain and emotion. "The Federation wasn't supposed to be this way. We were supposed to bring peace, not oppression." Before Lyra could respond, the distant sound of boot steps echoed through the tunnel. Federation search units were expanding their perimeter. "We need to keep moving," Jack said, checking a makeshift map device on his wrist. "We need to reach Old Mining Quarter at the city's edge. There's an ancient tunnel system there that leads out to the ash wastes beyond Citadel Prime." Lyra nodded, her instinctive distrust of humans temporarily suspended in the interest of survival. She began to focus, drawing on skills developed during years of resistance work. The city's old aqueduct system runs parallel to these maintenance tunnels. If we can access it, we might move faster with less chance of detection. Jax looked surprised. "You know the pre-Federation infrastructure? My people built the foundations of this city long before humans arrived," Lyra replied with quiet pride. "Some knowledge survives despite your cultural realignment programs." Jax had the grace to look ashamed. "Show me," he said simply. They continued through the labyrinth beneath Citadel Prime, their unlikely alliance tested by multiple security checkpoints, patrol drones, and sensor arrays. Each time, they combined their knowledge, Jax's technical skill with Federation systems and Lyra's understanding of the city's original design, to overcome the obstacles. During a particularly tense moment, hiding in an abandoned technical shaft while a search party passed overhead, Jax treated his energy weapon burn with a portable medikit. Lyra watched him struggle one-handed with the antiseptic spray. After a moment's hesitation, she reached into a hidden pocket in her prisoner's garment and withdrew a small packet of dried azure leaves. "Here," she said, cautiously offering them. "Xylosian healing herb. It will soothe the burn and accelerate tissue regeneration." Jax looked at the herbs with surprise. "You had these when you were about to be executed?" "Force of habit," Lyra replied with a ghost of a smile. "Resistance fighters never go anywhere unprepared." She crushed the leaves between her fingers and applied the resulting paste to Jax's shoulder. He winced, then sighed with relief as the herb's natural analgesic took effect. "Thank you," he said, meeting her eyes. In that brief moment of connection, something shifted between them, a fragile beginning of trust. Hours later, exhausted and grimy, they emerged from a collapsed mine shaft at the very edge of Citadel Prime. Before them stretched the infamous ash wastes, a vast polluted desert created by years of industrial waste and the remnants of the war that had preceded Federation occupation. The gray-white landscape seemed to shimmer under the setting sun, punctuated by twisted metal formations and the occasional skeletal remains of pre-war structures. Not the most welcoming sight, Jax commented, squinting at the harsh terrain. But the one place Federation sensors have trouble penetrating, Lyra replied. The mineral content in the ash interferes with their equipment. Good for hiding, less good for breathing, Jax said, pulling 2 filtration masks from his pack and offering one to Lyra. We should be able to reach the Resistance outpost in 3 days if we maintain a steady pace and avoid the toxic storm fronts. Lyra stared at him. You know about our outposts? Jax adjusted his mask. I know a lot of things I shouldn't. It's why I couldn't stand by and watch you die for crimes you didn't commit. As night fell, they made camp in the hollow remains of a crashed transport vessel half buried in ash. The desert's temperature dropped drastically after sunset, forcing them to huddle near a small heat generator Jax had brought in his emergency pack. You came prepared for an escape, Lyra observed. I didn't plan to rescue you specifically, Jax admitted, but I've been gathering supplies for months, waiting for a chance to defect. Your execution was just the final push I needed to take action. In the dim light of the generator, Lyra studied this strange human who had upended her fate. You still haven't fully explained why you'd throw away your life for a Xylosian you don't know. Jax was silent for a long moment, watching the play of light on the metallic walls around them. I was a Federation soldier once, he finally said. True believer in the cause. 5 years ago, I was stationed in the Eastern Province during what they called a civil disturbance. His voice grew tight. It wasn't a disturbance. It was a peaceful protest. Xylosians gathering to commemorate a cultural holiday that had been banned. My unit was ordered to disperse them with maximum force. He paused, swallowing hard. I had a friend there, a Xylosian cultural liaison named Tarek. He tried to negotiate, to explain that the gathering meant no harm. Jax looked down at his hands. My commanding officer shot him in the head while he was speaking. Then we were ordered to open fire on the crowd. His voice broke. I couldn't do it. I lowered my weapon and was arrested for insubordination. Lyra sat very still, her silver eyes reflecting the generator's light. What happened? Military tribunal. They would have executed me, but one of the officers saw potential use in my technical skills. They reassigned me to maintenance after neurological conditioning to ensure compliance. Jax touched a small scar at his temple. The conditioning didn't take completely. I've been working against the system ever since, in small ways. Until today. The silence between them was heavy with shared understanding of loss and oppression. What about you? Jax finally asked. The charges said you were the mastermind of a technology smuggling network. But that's not true, is it? Lyra leaned back against the metal wall. No, I was part of the network, but not its leader. She hesitated, then decided to trust him with the truth. My brother, Kale, is the one they really want. He's a technological genius who discovered how to repurpose Federation weapons systems using Xylosian biointegration techniques. The information would be invaluable to the Resistance, Jax murmured. Exactly. When our cell was compromised, I volunteered to be captured. All evidence was designed to point to me as the leader. My public trial and execution would satisfy the Federation's need for a victory while allowing Kale time to escape with the actual plans. You were willing to die for him, Jax said softly. For him, for my people, for a chance at freedom. Lyra shrugged. It seemed worth it. And now, Lyra met his gaze steadily. Now I'm not sure what to believe. A human saved my life at great personal risk. Everything I thought I knew about your kind is being challenged. Not all humans support the Federation's methods, Jax said. Many have forgotten our original mission of peaceful coexistence. Some never knew it to begin with. They fell into silence, each contemplating the surprising alliance fate had thrust upon them. Outside, the winds of the ash waste moaned through twisted metal shapes, carrying the toxic remnants of war across an already scarred landscape. Morning brought new challenges as they ventured deeper into the ash wastes. The uneven terrain was treacherous, hidden sinkholes and razor-sharp metal fragments, making each step potentially dangerous. Toxic dust storms could materialize with little warning, forcing them to take shelter in whatever protection they could find: abandoned vehicles, natural rock formations, or the occasional intact pre-war structure. Water became their most precious resource. Jax's technical knowledge proved invaluable as he rigged a crude but effective moisture collector from parts in his pack, extracting minimal drinking water from the arid air. Lyra contributed her knowledge of which ash-adapted fungi were safe to eat, supplementing their meager rations. Their third day in the wastes brought them face to face with one of the desert's mutated predators, a six-limbed former desert cat whose ancestors had adapted to the toxic environment through generations of mutation. The creature's patchy fur and exposed musculature made it a horrifying sight as it stalked them through a field of crashed Federation shuttles. "Don't move," Lyra whispered as the beast circled them. "These creatures hunt by detecting motion and body heat." "Any suggestions?" Jax asked through barely moving lips, his hand inching toward the small blaster at his hip. "Traditional weapons just anger them," Lyra said. "They've evolved to absorb incredible amounts of damage." In a swift motion, she removed a small vial from her boot and broke it between her fingers. A pungent scent filled the air around them. The mutated cat reared back, its malformed face contorting in disgust. It gave a strangled yowl before retreating into the wasteland. "Pheromone extract from their natural competitor species," Lyra explained. "Rare and difficult to obtain, but I never travel without it." "You continue to surprise me," Jax admitted with grudging admiration. That night, as they took shelter in a deep cave formed by fused glass where the sand had been struck by energy weapons during the war, Jax noticed Lyra staring at a small holographic image projected from pendant she wore. "Your brother?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded, allowing Jax to see the image of a male Xylosian with the same indigo skin, but with unusual golden eyes instead of silver. Kale was always different, brilliant beyond measure, but with little understanding of practical matters. He created revolutionary technology without considering how the Federation would react if they discovered it. "Where is he now?" Jax asked. "If he followed our contingency plan, he should be in an abandoned mining complex deep in the ash wastes," Lyra replied. "A place the Federation declared uninhabitable after a radiation leak during early colonization. The readings were falsified by an early resistance cell to keep the area clear of Federation presence." "Is that where we're heading?" "Yes. If he's there, he'll have the evidence we need against Commander Kalen." She looked at Jax curiously. "What exactly did you discover in those communications that made you risk everything?" Jax's expression darkened. "Kalen has been running a secret program called Purification Protocol. On the surface, it's about containing Xylosian insurgency, but the actual goal is systematic genocide disguised as security operations. He's been testing bioweapons designed to target Xylosian physiology specifically." Lyra's face paled to a lighter shade of blue. "Are you certain?" "I saw the test results. Small-scale deployments in remote villages attributed to industrial accidents. Kalen is preparing for full implementation, using the technology smuggling network as justification for more extreme measures against your people." Lyra closed her eyes, absorbing this horrific information. "Then finding Kale is even more important. His evidence combined with yours might be enough to force the Federation Council to act against Kalen." They continued their journey with renewed urgency, pushing through the harsh landscape despite increasing signs of Federation activity in the wastes. Transport ships occasionally cut across the toxic sky, and twice they were forced to hide from patrol drones sweeping the area with radiation scanners. "They're looking for something specific," Jax observed after they narrowly avoided a patrol. "This is more than just a search for escaped prisoners." "Or someone specific," Lyra replied grimly. "If they've somehow learned about Kale's location." On the fifth day, they crested a ridge of fused ash and metal to see their destination in the valley below, an abandoned mining complex half buried in ash drifts, its twisted metal spires reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. Federation ships hovered nearby, their searchlights cutting through the perpetual haze. "We're too late," Lyra whispered, despair evident in her voice. "They found it." Jax studied the scene through a pair of enhanced binoculars. "Wait, look at their search pattern. They're circling the perimeter but haven't landed troops inside the complex itself. They haven't found the entrance yet." Hope flickered in Lyra's eyes. "There's a hidden access point through the old emergency cooling tunnels. If we can reach it without being detected." "Lead the way," Jax said, checking his blaster charge. They descended the ridge using a series of ravines for cover, carefully timing their movements to avoid the sweeping searchlights. As they drew closer to the complex, Lyra led them to what appeared to be a collapsed ventilation shaft, indistinguishable from the surrounding debris. She pressed her hand against a seemingly random pattern of metal fragments. A faint blue glow emanated from beneath her fingers, and a section of ground slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel downward. "Xylosian biometric lock," she explained at Jax's surprised expression. "It responds only to our specific genetic signature." They descended into darkness, the tunnel eventually opening into a vast underground chamber that had once housed the facility's massive cooling systems. Now it had been transformed into a makeshift command center for a small but diverse group of Xylosian resistance fighters. Portable power generators hummed, providing energy for communication equipment and life support systems. The Xylosians reacted with immediate hostility at the sight of Jax, raising weapons until Lyra stepped forward. "He saved my life at great personal risk," she announced loudly. "Without him, I would be dead and you would have no warning of what's coming. He deserves your respect and protection." A tall Xylosian with golden eyes pushed through the group, staring in disbelief. "Lyra, how is this possible? We received word of your execution." "Kale!" Lyra rushed forward, embracing her brother tightly. "This human, Jax, interrupted the execution. He knows about Kalen's purification protocol." Kale looked over her shoulder at Jax with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "A Federation technician?" "Former Federation soldier," Jax corrected. "Now just try to right some wrongs." The reunion was cut short by an alarm blaring through the complex. A young Xylosian rushed to a monitoring station. Multiple ships landing at all potential entrances. "They've deployed sonic mapping technology to locate our position." "How'd they find us?" Kale demanded. "There must be a traitor in your network," Jax said, moving to examine their security systems. "Someone who knew about this location and Lyra's execution." Kale's expression hardened. Only the inner circle knew both. He turned to the small group of resistance leaders. "One of you betrayed us." Before accusations could fly, Lyra intervened. "That can wait. Right now, we need to secure Kale's evidence and evacuate." Kale nodded grimly. "The data is stored in a secure server room. Follow me." As they hurried through the repurposed mining tunnels, a tall Xylosian with unusual red markings on his face fell in a step beside them. "I don't trust this human," he muttered to Kale. "His timing is too convenient. And yet my sister lives because of him." "Verex," Kale replied. "Judge him by his actions." They reached a heavily fortified door that Kale quickly unlocked with another biometric scan. Inside was a small server farm humming with activity. "All the evidence is here," Kale explained, initiating a download sequence. Detailed records of Kalen's experiments, the villages he targeted, the composition of his bioweapons, and his communications with certain Federation Council members who were supporting his initiative. Jax examined the data as it flashed across screens. "This is even worse than I thought. He's been planning this for years." A massive explosion rocked the complex, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "They've breached the north entrance," someone shouted from the corridor. "How long for the full download?" Lyra asked urgently. "For minutes," Kale replied, fingers flying over the controls. "We don't have 4 minutes," Jack said, checking a small scanner on his wrist. "Federation troops will reach this position in less than 3. Verex, who had been watching Jax intently, suddenly drew his weapon. Or perhaps they already have a man inside. He aimed directly at Jax's head. How convenient that you rescued Lyra, just in time to follow her to our secret base. Verex, stand down. Kale ordered. Think about it. Verex continued, his weapon unwavering. Who else knew about the execution details in this location? Who had access to Federation communications? He's Kalen's spy. Lyra stepped between Jax and the weapon. If he wanted to betray us, he could have done so a dozen times during our journey here. Step aside, Lyra, Verex growled. Your judgment is compromised by whatever lies he's told you. The standoff was interrupted by another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered momentarily. We don't have time for this, Jax said evenly. Verex, if I were working for Kalen, why would I have exposed his genocide plan? Why not simply let Lyra be executed? Verex hesitated, doubt crossing his features for the first time. Kale, still working on the download, spoke without looking up. Verex, when did you first hear about Lyra's execution date? From you, of course, Verex replied. No, Kale said quietly. I never told you the specific date. That information was compartmentalized. Only those who needed to know were informed. Realization dawned on Lyra's face. It was you. You were the one who betrayed our network to Kalen. Verex's expression shifted from accusation to cold calculation. In a swift motion, he redirected his weapon and fired at the server banks. Jax lunged forward, knocking his arm upward so the shot struck the ceiling instead. The two men grappled as Lyra and Kale worked frantically to complete the download. Verex, with a warrior's training, quickly gained the upper hand over Jax, slamming him against a wall and reaching for a blade at his belt. I was supposed to kill you in the waist, he hissed at Lyra. Kalen promised me immunity and power once the purification began. Your unexpected survival complicated things. Lyra abandoned the download to help Jax, but before she could reach them, a new figure appeared in the doorway. Commander Kalen himself, flanked by elite Federation guards in full combat armor. Well done, Verex, Kalen said with cold satisfaction. Though your timing could have been better. Verex straightened, maintaining his hold on Jax. Commander, His words ended in a gurgle as Kalen shot him through the throat with surgical precision. I don't reward failure, the commander said as Verex's body crumpled to the floor. Kalen surveyed the room, his pale eyes lingering on each face. The infamous Kale, the martyred Lyra, and... He paused, studying Jax with interest. Technician 3rd Class Jax Mercer, formerly sergeant in the 105th Pacification Unit. You've led me on quite a chase. It's over, Kalen, Kale said, subtly positioning himself to shield the nearly complete download. The evidence of your crimes has already been transmitted. Kalen smiled thinly. A bluff, but an admirable one. My ships have been jamming all outgoing communications since we arrived. He gestured to his guards. Secure them. Kill the human if necessary, but I want the Xylosians alive for now. Their unique genetic structures will provide valuable data for my final solution. As the guards advanced, Jax caught Lyra's eye and made a subtle gesture toward his belt. Understanding flashed between them. In one coordinated movement, Jax activated another EMP device, his last, while Lyra grabbed her brother and pulled him beneath a metal console. The pulse disrupted the guards' weapons and visors, creating momentary confusion. Kale, realizing what was happening, slammed his hand onto the console, completing the download to a physical data crystal, which he quickly pocketed. Kalen, partially shielded from the EMP by his advanced armor, fired at Jax, catching him in the side. Jax gasped in pain, but managed to tackle one of the disoriented guards, seizing his weapon. Lyra launched herself at Kalen with unexpected ferocity. Though smaller and physically weaker, her years in the Resistance had taught her to use speed and leverage against stronger opponents. She struck at the joints of his armor, where protection was sacrificed for mobility. Kalen snarled in frustration, unable to bring his weapon to bear as Lyra darted around him. When he finally managed to grab her arm, Jax fired the appropriated weapon, hitting Kalen's shoulder armor and forcing him to release her. Meanwhile, Kale had recovered Varex's fallen weapon and was providing covering fire toward the doorway, where more Federation troops were attempting to enter. The three fought their way toward a secondary exit at the rear of the server room, Jax's technical knowledge allowing him to seal doors behind them through emergency protocols. Throughout the complex, the sounds of battle echoed as the outnumbered resistance fighters engaged the Federation forces in desperate holding actions. As they reached a narrow maintenance tunnel, Kale paused at a communication terminal. "Cover me," he gasped, inserting the data crystal. "What are you doing?" Lyra demanded, firing down the corridor at approaching shadows. "We need to evacuate." "Sending the evidence," Kale replied, fingers flying over the controls. "This terminal connects to an old satellite system the Federation doesn't monitor anymore. It's slow but undetectable." "Hurry," Jax urged, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "Kalen won't be far behind." Kale worked frantically, bypassing security measures and establishing the connection. Just as he initiated the transmission, energy fire struck the terminal, blasting him backward. "Kale!" Lyra screamed, rushing to her brother's side. Blood seeped from a wound in his chest, his golden eyes wide with shock. At the end of the corridor stood Kalen, his armor smoking from damage but his weapon steady. "Step away from the terminal," he ordered coldly. Jax positioned himself in front of the injured Kale and defiant Lyra. "It's too late, Kalen. The transmission has started. Even if you kill us all, your crimes will be exposed." "Then I'll have nothing to lose by eliminating witnesses," Kalen replied, raising his weapon. Jax lunged forward instead of retreating, a move so unexpected that Kalen hesitated for a crucial second. Jax slammed into the commander, disrupting his aim. They crashed against the corridor wall, Jax using every dirty fighting technique he'd learned in Federation special training. Lyra quickly assessed her brother's wound. "It's bad but not immediately fatal," she told him. "Can you move?" Kale nodded weakly. "The transmission needs 3 more minutes to complete." "We'll give you those minutes," Lyra promised, joining Jax in the fight against Kalen. The commander was a formidable opponent, his augmented armor providing both protection and enhanced strength. But fighting two determined opponents in a narrow corridor limited his advantages. Jax focused on damaging the armor's power systems, while Lyra targeted the vision sensors and joint mechanisms. Kalen landed a devastating blow to Jax's wounded side, sending him to his knees with a cry of pain. As he raised his weapon for a killing shot, Lyra jammed her last Psilosion healing herb packet into a crack in his helmet seal. The concentrated herbs caused an immediate allergic reaction in human tissue, making Kalen gasp and claw at his faceplate. Jax recovered enough to deliver a powerful upward strike to Kalen's exposed neck, causing the commander to stagger backward. Together, Jax and Lyra forced him further down the corridor, away from the terminal where Kale monitored the transmission progress. 60 seconds remaining, Kale called weakly. Kalen, realizing what was happening, fought with renewed desperation. "You can't stop what's coming," he snarled through his damaged helmet. "The purification protocol has too many supporters in high command. Kill me, and another will take my place." "Maybe," Jax acknowledged, blocking a vicious strike. "But they'll be exposed before they can act. And we'll be ready for them," Lyra added, delivering a precise kick to Kalen's damaged knee joint. The commander went down hard, his armor locking up from accumulated damage. He reached for an emergency sidearm, but Jax was faster, kicking it away. "Transmission complete," Kale announced. Kalen laughed bitterly despite his defeat. "You think this changes anything? The Federation will bury any evidence. They need my methods to maintain control of this sector." Jax knelt beside the fallen commander, removing the man's helmet to reveal his scarred, hate-filled face. "You don't understand, Kalen. We didn't send it to the Federation," Lyra continued, her silver eyes cold. "We sent it to every independent news network in the galaxy, every human rights organization, and directly to the families of every victim you've claimed. No cover-up can silence that many voices." Fear finally showed in Kalen's eyes as he realized the full implications of his exposure. The complex shook with another series of explosions as Federation forces pushed deeper inside. The resistance fighters were being overwhelmed. "We need to move," Jack said, helping Kale to his feet while Lyra secured Kalen with restraint from his own armor. "What about him?" Lyra asked, nodding toward Kalen. "We take him with us," Jax decided. "He'll stand proper trial for his crimes." They made their way through hidden emergency tunnels, assisting injured resistance fighters when they encountered them. The small group eventually reached a concealed exit that opened into a narrow ravine far from the main Federation assault. By dawn, they had established a temporary camp in a sacred cave system known only to the oldest Xylosian families. The natural mineral composition of the caves blocked Federation scanners, giving them temporary safety. The injured were treated with limited medical supplies. Kale's condition stabilized, though he remained weak. Kalen was secured under heavy guard, his protests and threats eventually giving way to sullen silence as news reached them that his transmissions were indeed causing ripples throughout the galaxy. Independent news feeds reported mass protests on core Federation worlds as the evidence of the purification protocol became public. Several council members had already resigned in disgrace, and investigations were being launched into all military operations on Xylos. Lyra found Jax sitting at the mouth of the cave, watching the sunrise paint the toxic landscape in unexpected beauty. She sat beside him, careful of his bandaged side. "Your people have remarkable medical techniques," he commented. "I should have been out for days with that wound." "We've had plenty of practice treating injuries during our resistance," she replied quietly. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, both aware of how drastically their lives had changed in less than 2 weeks. "What happens now?" Jax finally asked. Lyra looked out at the wasteland that was both her prison and her home. "The Federation won't collapse overnight. Change will come slowly, if at all. But it will come," Jax insisted. "What Kalen was planning, the systematic elimination of your people. It's too horrific for most Federation citizens to ignore once they know the truth." "Perhaps," Lyra acknowledged. "But my people have learned not to place too much hope in human promises." Jax winced, both from his injury and her words. "That's fair. We haven't given you much reason to trust us." In the days that followed, their makeshift refugee camp organized itself into something more permanent. The cave system was extensive, with natural chambers large enough to house the survivors. Ancient Xylosian glyphs covered some of the deeper walls, reminding them that their ancestors had found shelter here long before the Federation arrived. Kale recovered slowly but steadily, his brilliant mind already working on plans to use the political turmoil to the Xylosians' advantage. He spent hours in hushed conversation with other resistance leaders, occasionally consulting Jax about Federation protocols and weaknesses. "You know," Kale said to Jax one evening as they shared a sparse meal of synthesized protein and cave fungi, "when Lyra told me a human had saved her, I didn't believe it. I thought it was some elaborate Federation trick." "Can't blame you for that," Jax replied, shifting to find a more comfortable position for his healing side. "But now I see why she trusts you." Kale's golden eyes studied Jax intently. "You risked everything based on a moral principle. That's rare." "Not as rare as you might think," Jax countered. "Many humans are uncomfortable with what the Federation has become. They just don't know what to do about it." "Perhaps they need an example to follow," Kale suggested. Outside the caves, the political landscape was shifting rapidly. Federation ships had withdrawn from the immediate area, focusing instead on containing the public relations disaster unfolding across multiple worlds. Independent news networks continued to broadcast evidence of Kalen's atrocities, forcing official acknowledgement for Federation headquarters. A tribunal had been convened to investigate the purification protocol, with several high-ranking officials already placed on administrative leave. Commander Kalen himself had been transferred to a maximum security facility on a core world, awaiting trial for crimes against sentient beings. While these developments were encouraging, they did little to immediately improve conditions for the Xylosians. Federation control of the planet remained firm, if somewhat more restrained in its methods. On the 10th day, in the caves, Lyra found Jax at their usual spot overlooking the wasteland. The permanent twilight of Xylo's thick atmosphere cast long shadows across the ash dunes. "The council has made a decision," she said without preamble. "They're sending representatives to negotiate with the moderate faction that's taken control of regional Federation operations." "That's good news, isn't it?" Jax asked, noting the tension in her posture. "Potentially. The Federation is offering amnesty to all Resistance members and promising reforms." She paused, watching his reaction. "They're also requesting your return, citing your technical knowledge of sensitive systems." Jax's expression darkened. "In other words, they want to silence me." "That was our interpretation as well," Lyra agreed. "The Council has unanimously voted to reject that particular condition of the negotiations." Jax looked surprised. "They're protecting me? You saved my life at great personal risk. You helped expose genocide. You fought alongside us when you could have surrendered." Lyra sat beside him, closer than usual. "You're one of us now, whether you intended that or not." "I'm not sure I deserve that honor," Jax said quietly. "It's not about deserving," Lyra replied. "It's about choosing. Every day, we choose who we are and what we stand for." She looked out at the wasteland. "I chose to sacrifice myself for my brother and our cause. You chose to intervene, to save someone society had deemed expendable. I couldn't watch them execute an innocent person," Jax said simply. "And that's why you belong with us." Lyra's silver eyes met his. "The Council has offered you formal asylum among the Xylosian people. You would be the first human to receive such status." Jax was silent for a long moment, overwhelmed by the significance of what she was offering. "What about you?" he finally asked. "What do you want?" Lyra smiled, a rare, full expression that transformed her serious face. "I once believed all humans were my enemies. You proved me wrong. That's liberating. Liberating enough to consider a future where not all humans and Xylosians are enemies." Jax asked carefully, "Perhaps even one where some are more than friends?" Lyra suggested, her voice soft but certain. Their conversation was interrupted by a young Xylosian messenger who approached with urgent news. Federation representatives were requesting an immediate meeting at a neutral location. They claimed to have a proposal that would fundamentally change the relationship between humans and Xylosians. The council convened quickly, with Lyra, Kale, and Jax participating in the tense discussion. Eventually, they agreed to send a small delegation to hear the proposal, with extensive security precautions. 2 days later, Lyra, Kale, Jax, and 3 senior resistance leaders sat across from Federation diplomatic team in an abandoned weather station on the edge of the ash wastes. The contrast between the groups was stark. The Federation representatives in their pristine uniforms, the Xylosian delegation bearing the marks of their struggle. "We'll be direct," said the lead Federation diplomat, an older woman named Admiral Thorne. "The evidence your group released has caused an unprecedented crisis within Federation governance. The public is demanding accountability." "As they should," Kale replied coldly. "Genocide is not a policy disagreement." Admiral Thorne nodded gravely. "Agreed. The purification protocol has been officially condemned and all associated research destroyed. But we face a larger problem. The relationship between humans and Xylosians has been fundamentally damaged, perhaps beyond repair." "You're only now realizing this?" one of the resistance leaders asked incredulously. "No," the admiral admitted. "Many of us have been concerned for years, but lack the power to effect change. This crisis has shifted the balance." She straightened in her chair. "We are proposing a new governance model for Xylos. Shared administration, equal representation, and reparations for decades of oppression." Stunned silence met her words. "Why would you offer this now?" Kale finally asked. "What's changed besides public opinion?" A younger Federation officer spoke up. "Everything. This scandal has revealed deep ethical failures in our approach to non-Earth civilizations. Reform elements within the Federation have gained significant power. And," he glanced at Jax, "when one of our own was willing to risk everything to save a Xylosian, it forced many to reconsider their assumptions." "Pretty words," Lyra said skeptically. "But we've heard promises before, which is why we're prepared to demonstrate our sincerity immediately." Admiral Thorne replied. Effective today, all political prisoners will be released. The military governor will be replaced by a joint council. Restrictions on Xylosian cultural practices will be lifted. The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides suspicious but cautiously optimistic. By nightfall, a preliminary agreement had been reached. Not peace, exactly, but the beginning of a path toward justice. As they prepared to return to the caves, Jax pulled Lyra aside. Do you believe them? She considered the question carefully. I believe that systems can change when enough pressure is applied. Whether this change will last. She shrugged. We'll have to ensure it does. Jax asked with a small smile. Yes, Lyra confirmed, taking his hand in a gesture that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. Someone needs to build bridges between our peoples. Who better than those who have already crossed the divide? In the months that followed, Xylos began its slow transformation. The promised reforms were implemented, though not without resistance from hardliners on both sides. Lyra embraced a new role as a diplomat and cultural interpreter, using her intelligence and compassion to help heal decades of wounds. Kale returned to his true passion, technology, but now working openly with both human and Xylosian scientists to restore Xylos' damaged ecosystem. The integration of Federation technology with traditional Xylosian biological knowledge offered new hope for the ash wastes. Jax found purpose in helping to dismantle the more oppressive aspects of Federation control. His intimate knowledge of their systems made him invaluable in identifying hidden surveillance and control mechanisms. More importantly, he served as living proof that cooperation was possible. 1 year after their escape from Citadel Prime, Lyra and Jax stood together at the edge of a remarkable sight, the first green growth in the ash wastes in decades. Kale's team had successfully developed a hybrid lichen that could absorb toxins while establishing a foundation for future plant life. It's just the beginning, Lyra said, watching the patches of pale green spreading across the gray landscape. Full restoration will take generations. But it's a start, Jax replied, his arm around her shoulders. Sometimes that's all you need. Lyra leaned into him, her silver eyes reflecting the faint light of hope. When you jumped onto that execution platform, did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Honestly, I didn't think beyond saving your life in that moment, Jax admitted. But I'm grateful every day for that impulse. As am I, Lyra said softly. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the slowly healing wasteland. The polluted sky still carried its rusty hue, but thinner now, allowing glimpses of stars beginning to appear. The future remained uncertain, full of challenges and potential setbacks. But for the first time in generations, it also held genuine possibility. They had chosen to save each other. A Xylosian woman sentenced to death and a human who could no longer accept injustice. In doing so, they had sparked something larger than themselves, a chance for two peoples to find a new way forward together. As darkness fell, they turned back toward the settlement that had grown around the ancient caves, no longer a hideout, but the beginnings of a new community where humans and Xylosians worked side by side. It wasn't perfect. Nothing worth building ever is. But it was real, and it was theirs, and they would defend it with everything they had. Come on, Lyra said, taking Jax's hand. There's still so much work to do. Together, Jax replied, his fingers intertwining with hers. Together, she agreed as they walked toward the lights of home.